He has been pushed to the absolute limit, warned, goaded, and left simmering with a rage that has been building for months. And now, Cain Dingle has finally snapped. In a shocking early release on ITVX, Emmerdale fans have witnessed one of the most brutal and explosive confrontations the village has seen in years, as Cain launches a vicious attack on Joe Tate that leaves everyone around him reeling. But what nobody expected was what came next, because before the dust has even had a chance to settle, Graham Foster steps out of the shadows with a warning so chilling it stops everything dead in its tracks. This is not a storyline you can afford to miss, and if you haven't seen it yet, buckle up, because things in Emmerdale are about to get very, very dark. Welcome back to Emmerdale Echoes, your go-to place for the very latest Emmerdale drama, spoilers, and storyline updates. Whether you're here for the breakdowns, the behind-the-scenes analysis, or just need someone to talk you through the chaos unfolding in the Dales, you're in exactly the right place. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single update, because if today's script is anything to go by, things are only going to get more intense from here on out. Now, ITVX has once again given dedicated Emmerdale fans an early peek at what's coming, and this week's early release has sent the fanbase into an absolute frenzy. The scene in question involves Cain Dingle, never a man known for his restraint, and Joe Tate, the smooth-talking, well-dressed thorn in the Dingle family's side who has been weaving his web of manipulation across the village for quite some time now. The footage has already been widely discussed online, with fans, forums, and social media pages lighting up in response to what is being called one of the most visceral and emotionally charged scenes of the current series. And as if the attack itself wasn't enough to send shockwaves through the fanbase, Graham Foster's subsequent warning has only deepened the sense that this particular storyline is heading somewhere truly dangerous. To truly understand the weight of what unfolded in this early ITVX release, we need to take a step back and look at the history between these characters, because this moment didn't arrive out of nowhere. It has been a long, slow burn of tension, resentment, and barely concealed fury. Cain Dingle, played with extraordinary intensity by Jeff Hordley, is one of Emmerdale's most iconic characters. He is a man defined by loyalty to his family, a fierce protectiveness over those he loves, and a temper that, when ignited, is almost impossible to extinguish. Cain has faced down criminals, rival families, and threats of every kind over the years, but what has consistently undone him is anything that touches his family, his pride, or his sense of justice. Joe Tate, meanwhile, arrived in the Dales with a polished exterior and a hidden agenda that has gradually revealed itself to be far more calculating than most residents initially gave him credit for. His relationship with Debbie Dingle, Cain's daughter, has been the central fault line running through this entire conflict. Joe has played Debbie like a pawn, stringing her along emotionally, making promises he has no intention of keeping, and doing it all with that infuriating air of untouchable confidence that comes with old money and the belief that you are always the smartest person in the room. For Cain, watching his daughter be used and manipulated by Joe Tate has been a slow-burning torment. He has held back, been warned off, and made attempts to deal with the situation through channels that don't involve his fists. But there is only so much a man like Cain Dingle can endure before something gives way entirely. And this week something did. The early ITVX release picks up in a moment of raw, uncontained fury, and from the very first frame it is clear that we are watching Cain at his most dangerous. The confrontation between him and Joe is not a measured, controlled argument. It is explosive, physical, and utterly relentless. Cain launches himself at Joe with the full force of everything that has been building inside him, and what follows is a brutal attack that is as difficult to watch as it is impossible to look away from. The scene is brilliantly performed by Jeff Hordley, who brings a terrifying authenticity to Cain's rage. This is not pantomime violence. It is the kind of raw, emotionally grounded physicality that reminds you why Cain Dingle has always been one of soap opera's most compelling characters. Joe, for all his carefully cultivated self-assurance, is completely overwhelmed, and in that moment the mask slips entirely. The power dynamic that has existed between these two men, Joe's money and social position set against Cain's brute force and barely restrained fury, collapses in an instant. But what makes this scene even more significant is not just the attack itself. It's the moment immediately after, when the air is thick with tension and the consequences of what has just happened begin to dawn on everyone present. Because that is precisely the moment Graham Foster chooses to intervene, and what he says changes everything. Graham's warning is delivered with that characteristic quiet menace that makes the character so deeply unsettling. He doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten with grand gestures. He simply speaks, and the calmness with which he does it makes his words land with far greater impact than any raised voice ever could. The message is clear. What Cain has just done carries consequences that go far beyond a straightforward act of violence. Graham knows things. Graham is connected to people. And Graham is making it abundantly clear that Cain has just stepped into territory that could cost him everything. The scene ends on a genuinely haunting note, with the weight of Graham's words hanging in the air like a storm that hasn't quite broken yet. Cain, for perhaps the first time in a long while, looks like a man who is beginning to understand the true scale of what he has walked into. As you would expect from a scene of this magnitude, the online reaction has been enormous. Within hours of the early ITVX release, Emmerdale fans had taken to social media in their thousands, and the response has been a fascinating mix of shock, excitement, sympathy, and genuine concern for where this story is heading. Many fans have been quick to side with Cain, arguing that Joe Tate has had this coming for a very long time and that Cain's actions, however extreme, are the understandable result of watching his daughter be repeatedly hurt by a man who treats people as instruments for his own ends. Comments across Twitter, Reddit, and various Emmerdale fan forums have reflected this sentiment strongly, with many viewers expressing a cathartic satisfaction at seeing Joe finally face the consequences of his behavior. However, a significant portion of the fanbase has also expressed genuine alarm, not at Cain's actions, but at Graham's warning and what it might signal for the story ahead. Graham Foster is not a character who issues warnings lightly. His background, his loyalty to the Tate family, and his own murky moral history make him a deeply unpredictable presence. And fans are well aware that when Graham says something will happen, it usually does. Speculation is running wild about what exactly Graham's warning means, and whether Cain has just made the worst mistake of his life. Some of the more colorful fan theories doing the rounds suggest that Graham may have been sent by someone higher up the food chain to deliver that message, and that Joe Tate's influence in the village may be far greater and far darker than even the most attentive viewers have yet realized. What makes this particular development so dramatically compelling is the way it reframes the power dynamics that have been at play throughout this storyline. Up until now, the central tension has largely been presented as Cain versus Joe, brawn versus brain, instinct versus calculation, the Dingle family's raw, passionate worldview set against Joe Tate's coldly strategic one. But Graham's involvement shifts all of that. Suddenly, the conflict is no longer simply between Cain and Joe. It has expanded into something potentially much larger and much more dangerous, with Graham acting as a kind of dark messenger who represents forces beyond Joe himself. This is the kind of narrative escalation that Emmerdale does brilliantly, taking a storyline that is already intensely personal and widening it out into something with far broader implications. For Cain, the challenge now is existential. He has acted on instinct, as he always does, and in doing so he may have triggered a chain of events that he cannot control or contain through sheer force of will. For a character like Cain, that is perhaps the most frightening situation of all. Looking ahead, there is every reason to believe that the fallout from this confrontation is going to be one of the defining storylines of the coming weeks. Graham's warning strongly implies that Joe's position in the village, and possibly his connections to more dangerous people, is about to be thrown into much sharper relief. Whether that means a direct threat to Cain, an escalation involving Debbie, or the exposure of something in Joe's past that changes how we understand his entire character remains to be seen. What seems very likely is that this early ITVX release is effectively the opening chapter of something much bigger. The writers have carefully constructed this moment to serve as a turning point, and turning points in Emmerdale rarely resolve themselves quietly. Expect more confrontations, more secrets surfacing, and, if past Emmerdale form is anything to go by, at least one more jaw-dropping twist before this particular chapter reaches its conclusion. There is also the question of Debbie's role in all of this. She has been the emotional center of the Joe Tate storyline from the beginning, and with tensions now escalating to a point of no return, her choices and her loyalties are going to be put under enormous pressure. Could Debbie be forced to choose between her father and a man she still has complicated feelings for? That is exactly the kind of impossible situation Emmerdale excels at crafting, and it would not be at all surprising to see that dilemma placed front and center in the coming episodes. So, to bring it all together, this early ITVX release has delivered one of the most explosive and emotionally charged moments of the current Emmerdale series. Cain Dingle's brutal attack on Joe Tate has been a long time coming, but rather than bringing any kind of resolution, it has opened up a far more dangerous chapter in this story. Graham Foster's chilling warning in the aftermath of the confrontation has made it unmistakably clear that the consequences of Cain's actions could be severe, and that the forces arrayed against him are more formidable than he may have anticipated. With fan reactions running at fever pitch and speculation about future twists reaching new heights, this is absolutely a storyline to watch very closely in the weeks ahead. So what do you think? Was Cain right to snap, or has he just made the biggest mistake of his life? And what do you make of Graham's warning? Is this just posturing, or is Cain genuinely in danger? We would absolutely love to know your thoughts, theories, and predictions, so drop them in the comments section below, and let's get the conversation going. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give the video a thumbs up. It really does make a huge difference to the channel, and helps us keep bringing you all the latest Emmerdale drama and spoilers. And if you haven't subscribed to Emmerdale Echoes yet, now is absolutely the time to do it, because this storyline is far from over, and you will not want to miss a single update as it unfolds. We'll see you in the next one.